Hi, I'm Russell Newquist.
And I'm Morgan Nyquist.
We're the founders of Silver Empire Publishing, and we're here today to talk about Twitter marketing, your books, with Hans Schantz, who I will say at the beginning is one of the very few authors I know who is actually successful at using Twitter to market his books. I know a handful of others, but the only one I know who's actually more successful at using Twitter does it with controversy marketing, and we're going to have him on for a totally different episode about controversy marketing. So today we're here to talk about Twitter with Hans. And Hans, why don't you introduce yourself first and tell us a little bit about your books?
Sure. My name is Hans Schantz. I am originally an author of a nonfiction textbook on ultra-wideband antennas. I branched out into science fiction a few years ago, writing my debut novel, The Hidden Truth, the second book in my series, A Rambling Wreck, and the third book, The Brave and the Bold. My books are kind of a young adult science fiction, alternate history, conspiracy, techno thriller series that is a little difficult to pigeonhole in any particular genre. So I've had to work hard to come up with creative ways to get the word out and try to promote myself on Twitter and elsewhere.
Yeah, for those who are looking for what to compare them to, the best comparisons I've ever had would be to compare them to Michael Crichton's work or Neil Stephenson, and a little bit less to the Heinlein Juveniles. So works in that vein. A lot of fun. So I'm going to start out before we ask you a few questions, and I'm going to share one of my own personal experiences as far as using Twitter to market directly, which I found that Twitter ads, paid Twitter ads, are basically the most worthless ads you can buy on the internet. I found that across multiple businesses now, across reading, across my dojo, across other things, that it's throwing money down the tubes. If there's anybody in the audience listening who has a different experience with Twitter ads, we'd actually really love to have you on the show and share it with us. But as far as paid advertising goes, Twitter has been nearly worthless for us. And I've also found actually very few authors have a lot of success marketing on Twitter. They mostly seem to be just hanging out and networking with other authors, which is why we asked Hans on the show, because you actually have had some success with this. And so we kind of thought we'd get your insight into how you go about that and how you make it work.
Sure. Now, I have not had much success on internet advertising at all. In fact, I tried a little bit of Facebook advertising. I know that's one of the areas that's your specialty, and I'll be looking forward to hearing your ideas and tips on how to do Facebook advertising successfully. The most successful online advertising I've had is through Amazon. They have a nice advertising program. But really, I think the best advertising you can do is that kind of networking to try to build your community, to reach out to other authors and readers who would be interested in your books. I mean, I've heard people argue that you shouldn't be trying to network with authors, but I think it really requires a balanced strategy where you're reaching out not just to your readers or potential readers, but also to other authors. Because if you can get other authors talking about you, well, that brings you to the attention of their readers and vice versa. In fact, I find in my Twitter promotion, I probably spend more than 80% of my time promoting other authors. I mean, if you have a Twitter feed that says, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, it's going to be boring. It's going to turn people off. You have to have a feed that has interesting content. You have to engage with people in creative and humorous and interesting ways. And it has to be the advertising can't be the main purpose you're there. You kind of build a persona and slide in the advertising, get people interested in who you are and what you're talking about, so that they're primed and prepared to accept your recommendations for interesting books to read and maybe check out your books too.
I'm going to take off on that for a second. You're talking about people saying you shouldn't network with other authors, and that's kind of a new one on me. I've never really heard anybody say that. What I have said in the past, for sure, and I will emphasize, I do see a lot of authors who spend a lot of time trying to sell their books to other authors. And I highly recommend against that, because one, it just irritates other authors a lot, and then they won't help you out. But the other thing is, most authors don't make much money, which is what we're here trying to help people change. And so they're kind of poor, and there aren't as many of them. So you're really marketing to a bad crowd. Like, you're marketing to a group that's not really inclined to buy your book to begin with, and they don't have money to if they wanted to, and then you're going to annoy them. So a question to you that I have after my little ramble there: how do you balance that act of networking with other authors without sounding like you're just trying to sell your book to other authors? How do you approach that personally?
Well, what you try to do is, I probably met a few authors on Twitter, but it's mostly connecting with people I have met in other forums, going to conventions. I met a lot of authors. In fact, I think the first time I met you was traveling to LibertyCon a few years ago. And,
yeah, it's crazy. You live right around the corner, and we met 2 hours away in another city.
Right. But those kinds of conventions are good places to go. LibertyCon in particular, if you can get in, it's been getting crazy trying to get tickets to go to LibertyCon because they sell out so quickly. But that is a real authors convention with a lot of tracks about writing and a lot of great opportunities to network and just get advice from other more successful authors. So certainly you can hang out on Twitter and connect and meet with and interact with authors. Authors like it when you retweet their promotions of their books or things that they're saying, and you just interact with people you find that are interesting and hope that some of them will reciprocate. And similarly, be prepared to reciprocate when other people interact with you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good part of it. So tell us a little bit about what your typical day or week of Twitter interaction is like with your system. What kind of system do you use for Twitter in particular?
Well, I'm very busy and don't have a lot of time to hang out on Twitter. So I use two different tools. I use Hootsuite and I use Crowdfire. The free version of Hootsuite, before you have to start paying for it, allows you to schedule up to 30 tweets. And I think that's supposed to be a limitation, because if you're a power Twitter user, you want to be doing a tweet an hour, and that's not a lot. But I'm normally just using Hootsuite to schedule about 3 tweets a day. And I use Hootsuite to schedule a promotional tweet on a book or an author that I like. I do a tweet on a job opening at my company, and I do a tweet where I talk about my technical work, and sometimes plug one of my technical books or one of my forthcoming book, Fields and Energy, that I'm currently working on, and I'll share a figure or a thought or an idea from that book. So that's just 3 tweets a day that I'm using. Then on Crowdfire, what I do is the free version allows you to queue up to about 10 tweets. And in the free version, you're not allowed to specifically schedule them at specific times. So it just kind of randomly pops them out to put activity on the feed. And there I just pick interesting things that I see online. I'll throw in the queue so that they'll pop out randomly over the next few days. And that basically gives me about 5 tweets a day that are completely automated. I don't have to worry about putting on my thinking cap and coming up with something creative or funny. I do all that a week in advance, a week at a time. And then just as I am taking a break and want to decompress a little bit, I'll stop by Twitter, see who's interacted with those canned tweets, see what's going on in the feed, and interact with some of the other tweets that are going on. So it's a mix of leveraging automated tools to get a base of activity, and then stopping by for the more direct interactions.
So what's your typical ratio of non-promotional tweets to tweets that promote your own book?
Originally I was doing a tweet promoting my own book a day, and I tried some interesting strategies. I discovered some very hot hashtags. Now, if you one of the features in Twitter is if you just do a tweet, you have a chance that it's going to be seen by those people who follow you. And that's, particularly when you're starting out, that's a pretty small pool of Twitter users. But if you append a hashtag to the tweet, anyone who's interested in the topic denoted by that hashtag, who's clicked on that hashtag, say on some other person's tweet, will get a feed full of tweets that include that hashtag. And if you pick a very popular one, then you could get a lot of eyeballs, a lot of impressions on your particular tweet. Since my book had a lot of political tie-ins, I was using some political tweets or political hashtags like pound MAGA or pound QAnon that get a lot of traffic on Twitter and get a lot of impressions. The problem that you have is impressions do not necessarily equal interaction. I mean, if you use a tweet like that, a lot of people might look at it, but not interact with it unless you can motivate it, directly tie it into that hashtag or the kinds of things people viewing that hashtag would like to use. So, originally I was doing one reasonably high-profile trafficked tweet per day promoting my books and getting a couple thousand impressions, which is pretty good for a tweet from someone who doesn't have a huge number of Twitter followers. But I decided to kind of backpedal on that and try a different tact of just having my pinned tweet at the top of my Twitter feed be a promotional tweet for my book, and hope that people interacting with me through my other content would come to my profile page and see that. And I haven't really decided which approach is more effective, but the latter is certainly easier.
So have you basically stopped tweeting self-promotion of your own book almost entirely, or have you just gotten a much lower rotation of it, or how have you done that since you've been trying that?
Right now, I've stopped self-promoting almost entirely, and I just append another tweet to a Twitter chain I have pinned to my homepage when someone else mentions my book in a favorable way. So that what I'm doing is basically promoting or spotlighting what other people are saying about my book instead of trying to push it myself. Now, what I've also done is when it's been a while since that happened, I'll go and search back through the last couple years of Twitter, finding someone who has said something nice about one of my books and just pulling that forward to retweet it and promote it.
About how long has it been since you switched tactics on that?
Just in the last couple of months.
Okay. Do you have a sense for how well the new approach is working compared to the old approach?
Well, both approaches. Well, in the old approach, I'd easily get 1,000 to as many as maybe 5,000 impressions a day on my promotional tweets. And I'd see a handful of engagements and maybe a total of just a couple sales. Now, my books are only selling on average, a sale or two a day. So I'm not doing huge volume, and that smaller volume makes it kind of difficult to know for sure what the impact of the different promotional techniques are having on my overall sales. One thing that you can do is use, and one thing I strongly recommend you do as an author, is be sure you have an Amazon affiliate membership. They have an affiliate program that allows you to generate short links to sell a book. And if someone clicks on your link and buys your book or someone else's book through it, they will get a you will get a small percentage, typically like 4% or so of the purchase price, which just adds up as you have a lot of link clicks. But more importantly, you get an idea of what the activity or traffic is on that link. So you can keep track, if you're using a particular link, you can keep track of how many clicks you've had on that link, and get a better idea of how your marketing is working. If you've got a couple different sources you're trying to promote, whether it's tweets that you're doing on Twitter or different kinds of tweets, if you use different promotional links, you can count the traffic and get an idea of how successful they are.
Yeah, I actually recommend a lot of that myself. And one thing a lot of people don't know, and it took me a while to figure this out, is that Amazon, once you have that affiliates account, you can actually create a bunch of different links, a bunch of different tags for different things. And so one of the things that I recommend is to create a different tag for, say, Twitter marketing, or a different tag for Facebook marketing, or a different tag for whatever, so you can track them back to the source. That ties into the next question I was going to ask, actually, which is, have you been tracking clicks on those posts before and after your switch in tactics, and have noticed any difference on the clicks?
Yeah, I honestly haven't gone back to take a look because, my emphasis right now is on writing the next book. And as an author, you have to do a mix of promotion and writing. And you get to a point where you have to decide whether you're going to make more money by getting your next book out a few months earlier, or by spending your time and energy promoting your previous books and postponing the launch of your next book. And it's been a while since I've had a book out. So right now my emphasis has been more on spending my time trying to get the next books out, instead of doing an in-depth study of the marketing I'm doing. But I have the tools there to look at it when I get more engaged in marketing again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's always the fight we all have, is how much time do you spend in one versus the other. And the old saying that the best marketing you can do for your book is to write the next one has a lot of truth to it. It's not 100%, but there is a lot to that. And
well, that's exactly true, particularly when you have a series.
Yeah.
And I think one of the fundamental rules that I doubt many people would question is, to be successful, you want to have a lot of books in a series that are tied together, where if a person picks up book one and reads it, they've got a whole bunch of follow-on books to pick up and read. So you can turn a one book sale into a whole series sale.
Absolutely. I tell people a lot when they talk to us about how to make money in this business. When you're selling a $4 ebook or a $5 ebook, in order to make a lot of money, you have to sell a lot of them. I mean, you've just got to have the quantity. And that's a lot easier to do if one person can go buy 10 or 20 of your books than if they can only buy 1 or 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, we recommend any author that wants to be successful, you need to have several books out for sure.
If you can write a good book and then follow that up with more good books, whoever buys the first one is probably going to read through the whole series. And those are the kinds of readers you want to have. And that's really the best way as an author to generate income.
Absolutely. Going back to Twitter for a minute to get on topic here. So what kinds of things do you do to interact with other authors?
Well, I'll do things like retweet what they have to say or reply to their comments. When I see some other content on Twitter that is relevant to another author's book, I will come up with some kind of segue to retweet that content with a comment promoting the other author. Like today, someone had this wonderful map of the history of Viking incursions in northern France. And I thought, Iron Dragon by Rob Croce. So I retweeted that, mentioning, gee, if you'd read Iron Dragon, you'd already know most of the stuff in this wonderful map. So that just gave me an opportunity to send some eyeballs to a fellow author's book and hopefully generate some sales for him. And he's been very generous at mentioning me on occasion.
So when you do your hashtag marketing, how do you compose those tweets when you were using like the QAnon hashtag? You weren't just going in and just going like, buy my book, right? You had like a tactic and a way that you were tying it into the topics. So how did you do that?
Right. Well, I'm kind of fortunate in that my books do have a strong political tie-in, and that does generate a lot of traffic on Twitter. Like my third book is all about the evil cabal, the deep state cabal meeting on Jekyll Island, and my heroes' attempts to infiltrate and thwart their sinister plans. So it's a natural tie-in to things like deep state, conspiracy, QAnon. The tag phrase for the book was, where we go one, we go all, which is also a QAnon tag phrase. So that gave me some very, very natural high traffic hashtags to work into my promotioning. So my tweet might say something like, Peter has to go to Jekyll Island to thwart the pound deep state, pound conspiracy, pound cabal trying to take over the country, and read more in my book. So that tie-in gave me some very fertile ground to do some hashtag marketing. More generically, what you want to do is try to get a sense of what are high traffic, highly used hashtags that relate to your book. There are a lot of people tweeting about pound sci-fi or pound fantasy or pound YA on Twitter. And one thing you can do is take a look at those tweets that are using a hashtag that is genre specific to what you're selling. See what other kinds of hashtags those people are using to get a sense for what kind of hashtags are readers out there looking for and engaging with. Some of the most universally high traffic hashtags that work are pound free. There are a lot of people looking for free deals on Twitter. If you're doing a book promotion where you're giving your book away for free, pound free works very nicely. And of course, if you're in Kindle Unlimited, you can always add a tag pound free on pound Kindle Unlimited. And I found those got a fair bit of traffic when I did those.
Yeah, I've had good luck with pound free book, pound free books, pound giveaway.
There's also
a number of things of that vein. People do like free stuff. So if you have a free book, or if your book is free for a few days, if you're using the Amazon free book promotions, absolutely.
There's also hashtag am reading, which is, but there's a couple others. There's like, if you're looking for authors, there's hashtag am writing, or am writing sci-fi, or am writing fantasy. All of those get a decent amount of traffic, but if you're trying to sell a book, those aren't going to be the best ones. But am reading, there's several variations of it. It's like am reading romance, am reading sci-fi, just am reading is where a lot of readers kind of hang out.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be challenging to find good hashtags, and I'm not entirely happy with the hashtag tools. I'm really surprised they don't just disclose, or that you can't just go find a list of most popular hashtags. There are a few websites that purport to offer things like that, but I haven't had a lot of success with them outside of the political arena. There were a number of websites that were purporting to show what hashtags the Russian troll bots were tweeting on Twitter. And I actually went and grabbed their list of hashtags and was using those in my book promotion, since they were apparently hot and well-trafficked hashtags. But the sites I were using are no longer available.
So you don't trust Twitter's list of trending tags? For those who are listening who may not know, there's been a lot of controversy in the past about the possibility that Twitter is manipulating their trending list, and
changes for your location.
And
too.
It does change based on your location. It changes based on, I think it may change based on what Twitter knows about you personally. I'm not 100% sure of that, but they're clearly changing it based on various factors, and there has been a lot of speculation that they're doctoring the list for various reasons, ranging from marketing to their own political opinions. And some of that is happening. You absolutely know it for a fact, because if you go look at the trending list, some of them will be flat out marked as promoted, which means somebody paid to have their hashtag in the trending list. Usually one of the big national brand companies has probably shelled out rather a lot of money for that.
And that is another source of potential hashtag ideas. If there is something trending, and if you can jump on it and come up with some clever segue to tie that trending hashtag into your book, by all means, that'll get some eyeballs on it. Now, that's more likely to be a high impression, low engagement. But if the number of impressions are high enough, even a low engagement rate can generate you some clicks.
Right. I know one thing Hans and I have played with in the past is his books are set at Georgia Tech and mine are set at the University of Georgia. So every year around the Georgia Tech football game, we like to poke at each other good-naturedly on various social media and push each other's books through those hashtags. Another case of a high visibility but low engagement, but it's fun, and the people who see it tend to see it that way as well.
Yeah, I was disappointed that didn't get more engagement. I thought we had some very creative insults for each other. Especially given the Georgia Tech reading levels, I'm impressed we came up with that much.
But
Well, I am in awe of anyone with the sheer courage to market a book to University of Georgia fans that doesn't have any pictures to color.
there you go.
So I think, and you can agree or disagree with me on this, that the most important thing for this is that you're not just picking hot hashtags that have absolutely nothing to do with your book, or that wouldn't be interesting to the kind of people who would like your book, and then just spamming your book in it. You're actually like connecting what's going on with it, and then trying to leave the door open to some kind of interaction, not just spamming everybody in the hashtags.
It's amazing how well internet users these days can completely ignore something that's irrelevant. I mean, I have had hashtag tie-ins that frankly are a bit of a stretch, that if it's a hot or popular hashtag will generate thousands, even tens of thousands of impressions with no more than a click or two on it. So if you really have to have the combination of a good segue, a good tie into the hashtag, and hopefully a hashtag that people who actually read books are somehow engaged with or interested in, to generate a lot of activity. Now, the single most effective Twitter promotion that I have done is when I banded together with you, as you'll recall, and a number of other authors doing a joint sale with about a couple dozen different authors who were at least more or less similar to the kinds of books my own readers would be interested in, and do a big joint promotion. And I think that was very effective, because all it takes is one of the people in that promotion, or one person reading that, to say, gee, I liked one of these books, maybe I should check out the rest, and generate a lot of interest and engagement in the rest of the list of books that we had.
Yeah, and I think in the one case that the one we did that I remember being particularly successful, it wasn't even so much that the genres or the books were very similar, but there was a lot of appeal to a certain demographic that a lot of those books had. And I think that was part of what made it successful, was that there was a joint demographic that they all appealed to, even if it wasn't all the same genre.
Right.
And that, I think you really hit the nail on the head, you and Morgan both, with the comments about relevancy. You mentioned Facebook ads earlier, and the number one key to a successful Facebook ad is targeting. Targeting your ad is everything. Everything else is really secondary. You can have, the best example I had explained to me once is, you can have the best ad in the world for a lawnmower, and if you advertise it to somebody who lives in an apartment, it will do you no good. They don't need one.
Yeah.
They don't need one. They won't want one. Whereas if you could have the worst ad in the world for a lawnmower, but if your ad goes right to the guy whose lawnmower just broke right now, you're very likely to have an engaged sale, because it's what he needs.
Right.
And that kind of targeting is a little hard to achieve, but you get the idea that targeting is really the key thing. And I think that's true no matter where you're marketing, is getting it to the right people is really a big part of the key.
And I think that's a little bit about what's tough with Twitter is that you can kind of break into some circles of readers, but Twitter is really a bunch of people that are just kind of looking for the bite-sized, snips back and forth and stuff. And that is not always a good readers market for advertising to readers specifically.
Well, and I can absolutely say that that's a big chunk of why Twitter advertising is so poor. The ability that they give you to focus in your targeting is really extremely limited, and what they have doesn't actually generally give very good results in my experience with it. Whereas with Facebook, they give you a rather scary amount of power to dial in and target your ads. And so to go to the paid advertising for a minute, that I think is the main reason why Twitter ads are just in 21st century America, where such good targeting ads are available. Twitter ads are a case of just throwing your money away because you can't target them very well at all.
Yeah, really the best way to get targeted engagement on Twitter is specifically through that interaction with other authors. If you get another author who is writing in your genre or writing books that have a tie-in such that his readers are probably going to like your books, and have him promote your books or retweet your promotional tweet to his readers, then that's going to be very effective. But yeah, just randomly spamming ads on Twitter is really a waste of your time.
Yeah. And I know, in fact, from my experience, I can say I've bought exactly one product once ever from a Twitter ad. And that's it. Product.
I think that's one more than I've bought.
It's probably one more than most people. It happened. I'm convinced by absolute sheer luck they happened to hit the right person with their ad talking about targeting. They Shady Rays sunglasses. They had an ad. I lose sunglasses all the time. I wear them. I get cheap sunglasses. I'll wear them. I'll break them. I'll lose them. My kids will destroy them. Something will happen. And it just so happened that I got hit multiple times with their ad for buy a pair, get a second pair free, and a lifetime replacement guarantee on them. And I'm like, you know what? I'm the right guy for that ad. And so I gave them a try. That's it. That's the only product I've ever bought through a Twitter ad. And I have definitely bought products through other ads in other places. I've had cases where I've seen that. So
we could look it up and find how to do it and put it in the show notes. But there was a way, there's a way where you can go into Twitter and then basically see the information they have on you.
Right.
Like you're it's mostly demographic, but some of it's some interest stuff. And so I went and looked at it once, and some of it was kind of on, but the rest of it was not very accurate. And I think that's probably what they're basing
I think you're right.
Ad targeting on.
I know I get a lot of ads on there, and I look at it and I think, if these social media companies are going to be this invasive and know so much about me, can they at least get the ads better? Because this is terrible targeting.
So Twitter inherently is kind of a shotgun game of trying to build awareness, and you have to keep in mind that one of the other secrets of advertising is a lot of times it takes multiple impressions. You have to knock at the door many times before someone's going to open it up and talk with you. And if there are people in your target reader audience who keep seeing mentions of your book or references to it or tweets referring to, gee, I liked your book, eventually you'll catch them in a moment where they say, yeah, I've heard about that book and I think I'm in a mood to buy it.
Absolutely. I think the rule of thumb that I was taught in marketing is that you need 7 contacts with the customer before they'll buy your product, as a typical rule. I've seen other rules, guidelines that typically somebody's going to be on your mailing list for a year before they buy your product, as a rule of thumb. I've had personal experiences with people I've interacted with for ages on Twitter. Twitter as an example here, and I've been on there for years in some cases interacting with these people, and all of a sudden they find out I've written a book. And I'm like, where have you been?
Well, my best people like that are people I know through some other context who know me fairly well and are aware that I've written a book, but don't bother looking it up because it's not a famous book. It's written by someone I know. And then finally they'll buy my book, and I'll get this incredulous look of, wow, that was actually good.
I'll share an anecdote and embarrass my wife for a second about the time her mother came over and saw one of her books on the shelf and picked it up and was looking at it and says, wow, this looks like a real book. Sorry for the embarrassment there, but it is. It's something
my mother
that
has
happens.
also read your book like 5 times and not read mine.
What can I say?
I think every author has stories like that. At least my mother has read my books and actually likes them. I was quite happy.
I'd be surprised if my parents have read mine. It's not in the genre that they typically read. So, there is that.
So,
But,
one of the, I think, to kind of bring this into like the wider marketing, is one of the things to think about too is that Twitter, like you're saying, the shotgun method, Twitter is not going to be something where you're going to post once and then somebody's going to buy from you. And one of the big things you want to do is kind of build a fan base and build people who know you and like you. And Twitter is a medium to do that. And then using the hashtag marketing is a medium to find people who would be interested in your other tweets. So they might not buy directly off of the link that you put in when you're in the QAnon hashtag or whatever it is, but they might think that you're interesting and then come in and follow you. And then over time, they'll like your other tweets and everything, and then they'll end up buying your book. So you can't always directly measure the benefit this kind of thing is having just from the insights on the one post.
Oh, it's definitely a game of averages and momentum and continued effort to create that kind of awareness that leads to a sale. Yeah, I hope you'll have some of our author colleagues who work off of the generating controversy mode, because I've seen that can be pretty effective, and I haven't made the commitment to try to go that route myself, but I'd be interested in hearing how effective it is and how difficult it is to pull that off.
So I don't want to go too deep down that rabbit hole tonight, because we do have an entire episode planned on that, and I'm quite sure you have a good guess as to who we're planning to get on the show for that. The one comment that I'll make on that is that controversy marketing is really tricky in my experience. I've seen people be extremely successful at it. But it also, it brings a lot of downsides with it, because you're in a controversial space and there are a lot of people who aren't going to like what you're saying if you get into that space. And I've seen a lot of people do it very badly. And if you do it very badly, you're basically just going to piss people off. So,
well, overall, I think it's a risky move, because if you engage in controversy, you're probably going to piss off half of your potential fan base out there. On the other hand, if the half you're going to piss off are people who would not touch your books anyway, and you are solidifying a relationship with the half who do, then maybe there's some justification for it and it could work well.
I think it depends a lot on what you're writing and how it fits in there. And we'll be talking with our guest about that, because, the other thing, again, passing along some general marketing knowledge here, the one mantra that's worth repeating to yourself is, if your target customer is everybody, your target customer is nobody. And you do have to have a good idea of who your target is and who you're going after. And if your books happen to fit with controversy marketing, and that is your target reader, then that can be an extremely effective way to go. But if that's not really a good fit for your book, then you probably want to think twice about that as your approach.
And Twitter is kind of the king of the think the controversy marketing
Twitter is an
platforms.
excellent place for controversy marketing if you're going to go down that route. So, but that's why we split this in two, because that's not really been your approach, and many people, for very good reasons, are not ready to go down that approach. It can have a lot of consequences outside of your marketing push in the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking with our guest about some of that as well. He's dealt with a little bit of that as well, more than a little. And we should get his wife on too.
Yeah.
Actually, to talk about that side. Total side tangent there. So come on back and see the controversy marketing episode when we get to that one. That one will be fun. I can guarantee that.
I'll definitely tune in for that. I'm sure there will be some very interesting anecdotes about glitter bombs and other such things.
Other such bombs, I know for sure in this case.
So do you have any last little bits of advice for using Twitter as a marketing vehicle that you haven't shared yet?
Well, I think the fundamental piece of advice I would share on marketing, and it's something you touched on earlier, Russell, is writing the next book is very effective marketing. And you certainly do want to put some time and energy into self-promotion. You have to be willing to put yourself forward. You can't sit back passively and wait for people to notice you, because that's just not the way things work. You have to be willing to be to have the effrontery to think you're worth something and to shove your book under people's noses. But at the same time, you have to have a balance between that and writing the next book and creating more product, and maintain a balance between the two.
I'm going to make a comment on that real quick, because I've talked with a number of authors who I think have some mistaken impressions about writing the next book too. And I'm curious what your numbers are, because we have a fair amount of data now from various authors that we've published. And our experience is that writing the next book, everybody thinks, well, my book one sold this many copies, so book two is going to do even better. And my experience is that actually a lot of authors get discouraged because they put out book two or book three and it sells significantly less well than book one did. But what they don't realize is that book two or book three or book 10 or whatever is serving as very effective advertising for book one. And that the sales numbers on book one are the ones that keep going up. And if you look at a lot of the truly successful authors, you find that a very sizable chunk of their income is still coming from book one of that series. That 10 or 12 books into the series, now that they've gotten that far in, that book one is just generating a huge amount of income.
And I have run into readers who don't like to buy into incomplete series, and oftentimes will wait until the series is complete, until you've got the last book of the trilogy, or however many books there are in the series, before committing to buy the first one, because they hate running into a series they really like and then having to wait a year or two or longer to get the follow-on book. So that's also a factor.
I've seen that be a factor. We've seen series that have had jumps in sales when they're complete. We've seen adding that phrasing to things can be helpful in marketing. And on a related note, I know Nick Cole told me once a long time ago that 3 books into a series is a big inflection point where a lot of people just won't even pick it up. A lot of binge readers just won't even look at it till there are 3 books. And there's another wave of binge readers, the bigger binge readers, who won't even consider your series until there are at least 5 books. Because if there's not that many for them to read, they're going to go find something else that does have that many.
Yeah.
Before they take a chance. So writing that next book, really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also worth noting too, as we talk about all this, is like we said, is we haven't had any luck with Twitter paid promoting, or like paid promotions really. And then we don't do super good on Twitter. And the by its format is never going to be the place that sells you like hundreds and hundreds of copies of your book. These are just like tactics that you can take to actually make Twitter work for you instead of it, not doing anything for you at all.
I won't say never, but you're going to have to fall into some certain niche categories to do considerably better than that on Twitter.
Right.
So, all right. Well, Hans, thank you very much for joining us. Remind everybody his series, The Hidden Truth, Rambling Wreck, and The Brave and the Bold. Did I get those in the right order?
Yes, you did.
All right. I've read all three and love them, and I misremember the title orders sometimes. All three are available on Amazon or on our website at silverempire.org. We'll have links in the show notes down below. And your next book that you're working on, again, I've forgotten the title.
It's a nonfiction book, Fields and Energy, How Electromagnetics Works. And as soon as I can get that out of the way, I'll be on to book 4, A Hell of an Engineer, to conclude the initial Hidden Truth series.
And I'm going to plug his nonfiction work here for a minute. If you're a nerdy enough person in the audience like I am, I've had a number of discussions with Hans offline about where he's going in that book, and I think it's going to be a really interesting read. I'm looking forward to it myself.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure getting a chance to talk with you and share some of these ideas on author marketing. And I'm frankly looking forward to watching the rest of the series and seeing some of the other insights your interesting guests will have to share.
Thanks a bunch, Hans, and thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.